We've got joining us now from Washington, D.C., Congressman Michael Guest. Good morning there, Congressman. Afternoon where you are. Hope things are well for you.
Yes,
What's
sir.
happening?
Good morning to you back home. So glad that get the chance to be on and get a chance to see you for a few minutes today.
You got it. So I'm sitting here watching Merrick Garland testify to the House Judiciary Committee. You hearing any feedback on that? What a mess.
You know, not really. He's on the TV behind me. I've had meetings this morning and have not been able to follow it well. But I think we can say that as an attorney general, at least I can say I've been very disappointed with him, with the direction he's taken the Department of Justice. Some of the things, particularly talking about parents going to the school board, expressing their frustration with the school board is teaching their students, expressing sometimes the frustration the school boards keeping their children safe in schools, and Merrick Garland now wanting the Department of Justice to come in and investigate parents who are expressing their First Amendment rights and to be critical of elected or appointed politicians. And so he has very much politicized the Department of Justice. I think we see what a terrible Supreme Court justice he would have been if his nomination would have gone through several years ago when he was appointed under Obama, but that appointment was not ratified by the Senate. And so, again, he is a very partisan politician who has unfortunately been appointed and is now serving as our Attorney General.
Yeah, it's really incredible. But he seems to be kind of a reflection of the entire Biden cabinet. I'm starting to question their competence just across the board. We got Pete Buttigieg. I think he's getting on an airplane, as is the entire cabinet and the president, going to this climate summit. And they're flying on jets, and then they're going to travel to their final destination from the airport in big gas, fossil fuel powered SUVs. How can it be more any hypocritical than that?
Well, you're exactly right, and I think it all starts from the top, from the vice president down. First of all, I think we've seen that the American public is waking up to the agenda of President Biden. The politician and the candidate Biden is very different from the person that now holds that office. President Biden ran as being someone who's going to be a unifier. He was going to be a moderate. He was going to govern from the center. He was going to be a bridge builder. He was going to build alliances between Republicans and Democrats. And I think we've seen now the exact opposite. I think he is very partisan. We see that he continues to tack to the left. That he panders to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, the progressive side of his caucus. And then we've seen a complete failure by the vice president, someone that the president put in charge of dealing with the border crisis. I think she's been to the border once, possibly twice. The first time she went only was because President Trump was about to go to the border and she did not want to be shown up by the former president. But we hear nothing from her on the border, nothing from her of how she's going to solve this issue. As a matter of fact, we hear nothing from the Democrats as a whole. We still have not yet seen from Homeland Security the number of illegal encounters from the month of September. So here we are almost at the end of October, still waiting on numbers from last month. I suspect we haven't heard those numbers, Gerard, because those numbers are horrible. And I think we saw earlier, I saw some news coverage that there was a caravan coming up through Central America, through Mexico, that may have as many as 60,000 illegals heading for our southern border. So again, whether it be Secretary Buttigieg, as you talked about, the president, the vice president, our attorney general, I have been very disappointed in the entire administration and the partisanship that we've seen coming out of the Democratic Party, particularly from someone who ran as going to govern from the center. I think that his actions are the complete opposite.
It sure seems like it. And they run off to these summits and they meet with these other world leaders, but noticeably absent is always the biggest polluters, China, for example. I mean, they're building like a coal plant every other day, and they make no bones about it. Yet here in the United States, a major producer of oil in this country, Exxon, is talking about canceling 2 of their major projects because their board has somewhat been overtaken, and they're moving towards exiting the fossil fuels business at a time when we don't have enough to power the country or the world. It just seems like we're burning down the house before we have another one to live in.
And I think that's the Democratic playbook. They like to govern by crisis. And so if they can create an energy crisis, then they can then rally individuals behind the government spending trillions of dollars to invest in what have been very experimental in some cases forms of powering homes and powering vehicles. I mean, we've seen gas prices. There was an article that I read just today that Mississippi gas prices are now topping $3 a gallon. Up $1 from just a year ago. And a lot of that, I believe, has to deal with the policies that have come down from this administration, canceling the Keystone Pipeline, putting pressure on oil companies not to expand production. Again, trying to put more dependence on these on alternative fuel sources such as solar and electric. And look, those are the fuel sources of the future. We need to continue to develop those. But at this point, we're not in a position where we can depend upon those exclusively. We see places like California. Governor Newsom, I think last week, signed an executive order or signed legislation that would ban small engines, things that power things such as lawnmowers and weed eaters and generators and chainsaws, that everything in California is going to have to go electric. In Mississippi, that would be problematic, and it should be in California. What if there's a large natural disaster? What if that disrupts the flow of power? How are you going to charge a chainsaw that's battery powered if you don't have electricity? How are you going to produce that electricity if they ban generators fueled by diesel or gas? And so it just creates this quagmire, if you will, that the left is so pushing the destruction of fossil fuels. And you're exactly right, getting back to your first point, what we do here is going to pale in comparison to the pollution that we see in China. China continues to pollute. China continues, even though they claim to be a developing nation, they're not concerned with their carbon output. And so even if America reduces our carbon output to zero, we're still going to have pollution. It's still going to affect the globe because what we're seeing in China.
And thank you for that, Congressman, because I completely agree with everything you said there, and I know that you're always in opposition of policies that are going in that direction. We appreciate that. The thing I'm hearing from even members of our state legislature, they're telling me that the thing that is coming up more with their constituents is this plan for the IRS to snoop everybody's bank account. Are you hearing a lot of feedback on that one? This, of course, is Janet Yellen's wish for every bank to provide this information to the IRS.
We are. We're getting a lot of feedback into our office, probably also the issue that we're hearing more from constituents and others. We've tried to take a very active role on that. I know Treasurer McCray also has been very active in that. We've signed off now on 2 letters of the administration protesting what they're looking at doing. Also, we've co-authored 2 bills in the House that would prohibit that. But again, ultimately, this is going to be something that our colleagues on the Democratic aisle, that they are trying to push through the budget reconciliation process. They see this as what we would call for a way to pay for their large spending increases that they're talking in both the creation of new social programs and the expansion of existing programs. This is something that both the bankers and the credit unions are opposed to, as well as all consumers.
Yeah. Can you hang with us, Congressman, through the break? You got a minute?
Yes, sir. Would love to.
All right. That's great. We got Congressman Michael Guest on the line from Washington. Stay with us, folks. Middays will be right back. Is Congressman Michael Guest, representing Mississippi's 3rd District, is our guest on the program. He's talking to us from Washington. So, Congressman, it looks like the Democrats are having a bit of a tough go. They're getting stonewalled somewhat by some reluctant Democrat senators that aren't ready to sign on to this, the full scope of this $3.5 trillion Joe Biden domestic agenda. But they're signaling, I think we got it now, certainly over on the Senate and even to some extent on the House side. And Nancy Pelosi's even said she was trying to get something on the table by tomorrow, by the end of the week. What are your gut feel? What's your gut feel about this?
I think you're framing it up, Gerard, that, there continues to be internal discussions between progressives and moderates. This is a Democratic caucus issue. They are not having any consultation with anyone on the Republican side, Senate or House. This is going to be something, again, that they're using the budget reconciliation process to get through. And there are some moderates who are concerned with several different things in this. One was first the overall price tag of $3.5 trillion. We see that Democrats now are trying to find a way to reduce that price tag down to somewhere roughly the $2 trillion range. There's a lot of discussion on how do they do that. Do they do that by limiting the number of new programs and the expansion of programs that are going to be included? Do they do that by things such as just limiting the timetable or the time frame for which these programs are funded? Those programs include things such as, free community college, pre-K child care, expansion of Medicare, Medicaid benefits. All of those things are things that are being considered within that package. And we've also seen today, Senator Sinema has talked about the fact that she has concerns about the Democrats' plan to raise taxes, again, for this program to be created and for all these new entitlements is going to require additional taxes. The taxes be raised on hardworking Americans like you and I and so many that are listening to this show today. The proposal by the administration was we're going to raise individual income taxes, we're going to raise capital gains tax, we're going to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to raise the estate tax. So they're looking at a multitude of different tax increases, and we see that Sinema and Manchin both have kind of pushed back against that. And so I think from the information that we're getting, they're still further away than Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the president want us to believe. I think that they are making some headway. I think that they're closer than they were, say, a week to 2 weeks ago. But even once they get those issues resolved, there's some miscellaneous issues that may still hold this bill up. The SALT deduction, which are something that in many of these blue high stakes tax, where they're able to deduct state taxes against their federal income tax. Many of the moderates want to see those deductions reinstated. Many of the progressives don't want to see that. We think of things such as the Hyde Amendment, the federal funding of abortion. Manchin said he's not going to sign the bill unless the Hyde Amendment's in there. Many of the progressives have said if the Hyde Amendment's included, they're not going to support that. And so still mixed messages. I think leadership is trying to put up they're trying to message that they're very close, but there's still quite a few hurdles that they've got to overcome, I think, before they can get any bill that could pass the House and be signed off and passed all 50 members of the Senate. And there will be unanimous Republican opposition to the budget reconciliation process. So I would be shocked if there was a single Republican that supported this legislation. We view this as an expansion of government. We view this as tax and spend legislation. We view this as bad overall for the country, for the economy, for working Americans. We believe that this is nothing more than a giveaway by the Democratic Party to try to motivate their base for the 2022 election cycle in a way in which they are seeking to prop up and to reverse President Biden's failing polling numbers.
Yeah, new polls out today continue to plummet below 40% overall approval rating. And it's not just a poll, it's a number of polls that have been conducted here of late that show that because I think Americans are paying these high prices at the pump. They're finding the shelves are depleted. They're obviously experiencing the havoc being wreaked on their wallets every time they check out and they buy something. You've got leaders of businesses across the spectrum of industries warning about supply chain problems, signaling that they're going to have to raise prices. And most people they sort of associate that with the president, with the current commander-in-chief, whoever's in the White House. I don't think they try to dismiss it. And even Press Secretary Jen Psaki, we played a clip yesterday. She made her treadmill comment. You probably heard about that. And Ron Klain, I think I shared that with you at the golf tournament last week, just a couple hours before, said, well, these are high-class problems. I don't think most Americans view it that way.
And I agree with you entirely. You know, I think when we look at the multitude of issues that's facing the Biden administration and that the American public has now been made aware of, I think President Biden's going to go down as the worst president since Jimmy Carter. You know, he's Jimmy Carter 2.0. And you hit on all the issues. You hit on inflation. You hit on supply chain, record spending, record deficits, raising taxes, the border crisis, some of our foreign policy stumbles, particularly Afghanistan. I think when people look at that, and all of those things ultimately come back to the president, just as President for COVID, something that he had no control over, and something that he, based on Operation Warp Speed, was able to very quickly develop a vaccine. The Democrats and the media and the public, for some reason, cast that blame on Trump. And so when you look at these problems, many of these problems are created by decisions that Joe Biden has made, executive orders that he has put in place. And so, you know, these are problems that the Democrats have created by the policies that they put in place. And these are things that are important to all Americans. And these are things that people are going to be looking at when they go to the polls either next year. And we're also focusing and tracking the Virginia governor's election. We see that now has closed to a dead heat. The Republicans have not held the governor's mansion in Virginia for the last 3 terms. So it's been 12 years since we've had a Republican governor. And very early on, it looked like the Democrats were going to easily be able to retain the governor's mansion in Virginia. And we now see polling has that as a dead heat. And most of that, I think, are going to be national related issues, and that people in Virginia are mad about what they're seeing in D.C. And they want to make sure that we have checks and balances, which we don't have in Washington. Right now, with the Republicans in control of neither House of Congress nor the White House, there is no there, and we are unable to have the proper checks and balances that we need to make sure that we are keeping the Biden administration honest, and that the people of the American public knows the policies that the Biden administration is handing down.
Yeah, you know, I said earlier on the program, Congressman, one of my concerns is that they're now paring down the bill to sort of meet the requirements of the reconciliation process and, of course, show that it's paid for and so forth. And one of the ways they're doing that, which is a marquee element of the bill, is to reduce the child tax credit program to only 1 year over a 10-year scoring mechanism. And I call that sort of accounting trickery is really what it is. I think they're going to try to ram that through and then run around and parade and campaign on that. Hey, look, if you elect Republicans 2022, you may lose this money going into your account every month. Your thoughts?
You're exactly right. You know, what they're seeking to do on some of these programs, instead of eliminate programs that are going to be in the bill, they're just going to eliminate how long they're funded for. And then once those programs expire, they're going to seek to re-up those programs. And so the problem with this bill is the expansion of government. By the passing of the budget reconciliation process, the Democrats are seeking to expand government, and they're not paying for that extension more than a year, 2 years. And then they're going to come back and they're going to tell the American people, hey, we've got to keep funding these programs that we put in place, because, you know, once the federal government creates a program, it is the ability to roll that program back or to stop that program is very difficult.
They're just etched in stone. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate all you do for your constituents here in the 3rd District. We'll talk to you soon.